Hi, how you doing? Today we're going to talk about why it is that there are so many differences in opinion when it comes to which martial arts actually work. Before we get into it, I need to tell you that this video has a sponsor. Well, kinda, but more on that in a second. For full disclosure, this one's going to get a little ranty. What this video is actually going to be looking at is another heuristic. We've spoken about the sunk cost fallacy in the past, so we're going to stay away from that. But to make things more interesting, I'm not going to tell you what this one is just yet. You'll have to stick around to find out. The biggest difference in opinion is probably between those folk that do traditional martial arts and those who do combat sports. We'll look at a bunch of the arguments in both directions, and then to get back to the stealth topic, we'll look at why it is that people may be hanging on to those opinions. To summarise things, the standpoint of the people who claim combat sports are the only types of martial arts that work is that they're based on actual live competition against 100% resistance. That as soon as you take that away, you end up with forms of combat that are based only on what people think might work, or even worse, that they just want to work. And that inevitably leads to a system that does not hold up when tested. The other side of the equation is that combat sports are in fact just that. They're sports. They've been completely sanitised, and all the things that make traditional martial arts so effective have been removed. And so in a real-world encounter, outside of the friendly warm cage with its nice soft padded floor, the play fighting of MMA would rapidly fall apart. I'm not going to lie to you, I've spent years in both worlds. I hold one of these opinions very strongly indeed, and that's because I used to hold the other. And it's been disproven to me so many times, it became impossible to think anything else. Before we get into that, it's interesting to note that both these arguments are essentially saying exactly the same thing, and that's this. What we do is too dangerous to use against our training partners, and so we need to adjust it to make it possible to train. We've made that adjustment in a different way from you, and our way leaves us with a system that works in the real world. Your way doesn't. Traditional martial arts have removed the bit of their art where they actually put these techniques into practice in a fight, but kept the techniques. Combat sports have removed or modified the techniques that can cause permanent disability or even death, but kept the fighting. When you look at it like that, you can kind of see why the arguments happen. And if everything else was equal, it might be possible to just stop there, but it isn't equal. You get traditional martial arts that spar, that set one practitioner against another, and they fight. In those circumstances, the supposedly deadly techniques are also removed. You get combat sports teaching versions of techniques that very specifically set out to cause maximum damage, and also versions of the same techniques that can be applied in competition. I've been that karateka, sparring against my training partners with a limited selection of techniques, very few of which bore any resemblance to the ones we practiced as drills marching up and down the hall. But I've also been in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes being shown a technique to use if they're the enemy, and a less explosively damaging way of applying the technique that can be used against a sparring partner. What makes the difference here is not the actual techniques themselves, it's the way that they're taught. One tests and refines, the other doesn't. And this is what makes the difference. Yes, jabbing your fingers in someone's eyes when they're grappling with you may well go a hell of a long way towards stopping them. But let's face it, if I'm even halfway competent as a grappler, the first thing I'm going to be looking at doing is preventing you from hurting me, preventing you from escaping and then hurting you enough to end the fight. There's a reason that in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu so many people talk about position before submission, and it's simply about control. My first goal as a Jiu-Jitsu practitioner is to control you. Then, and only then, will I beat you. As a wrestler, it's essentially the same. The approach might be a little different, but the idea of dominating your opponent first and foremost is at the forefront of everything we do. I can only do this if I've practiced it. I'm going to use an old analogy here. If I want to learn to swim, I'm going to have to get in the water. If I went along to a swimming class and found people in their perfectly pressed swimming suits focusing on exactly how to tie their drawstrings with the correct knot before lying on their comfortable swimming couches in a temperature-controlled, water-free environment in order to practice their swimming techniques, I might be a little puzzled, and rightly so. Surely, swimming is about propelling yourself through water. Yes, it's a little risky, but we can mitigate a lot of that risk. We can make the water a nice temperature, make it clean and safe, ensure it's shallow enough that we can simply stand up if needs be. To start off with, learning those strokes is going to be really hard. It's going to be scary, and there'll be a very small, but also very real risk of drowning. The swimming instructor, at this point, has a choice to make. They can get in the water with you and ensure that you're completely safe while you're learning to keep yourself safe in the water. As your abilities increase, they can gradually increase the difficulty until they no longer need to be there with you. Or they can just remove the water completely and teach you a bunch of really cool stuff that looks flashy when people see it. They can tell you that you know everything you need to know to be able to swim in real actual water, not the pathetic, warm, clear, chlorinated water of the sports swimmers, but the real dangerous water of the real world. I'll be blunt here. Learning to fight in a system of martial arts that is not based on actual fighting is bullshit. It doesn't work. You might as well spend your time at home working on your chi blasts, and yet when it comes down to it, so many people still do it. They turn up to their ineffective martial arts classes, they run through the same pointless drills and go home happy, secure in the knowledge that if it came down to it, they'd be able to beat anyone in a fight, especially those idiot sports fighting people. Why is that? Cognitive dissonance is the vague sense of discomfort when a person feels two ways of thinking don't quite align. The more important the line of thinking is to us, the more uncomfortable we feel when this dissonance occurs. It's something we all encounter all the time. When we're trying to lose weight and yet want to eat food we know we shouldn't. When we know something's bad for us but really want to do it anyway. Yes, smokers and vapors, I'm looking at you. When we want people to think of us as good at fighting, but hate the idea of actually fighting. The concept of cognitive dissonance isn't really a problem. Like most of these weird ways our mind works, we can't stop it, but we can be aware of it and we can use that awareness to help us understand and develop. What causes a problem is the subconscious defense mechanisms we utilize to rationalize the dissonance between the different thought processes. The things our subconscious mind creates in order to remove the psychological discomfort. The first is to avoid or ignore the dissonance. Yeah, I'm on a diet, and yeah, I know eating a donut's wrong, but if no one sees me, I don't even really have to think about it. The second is delegitimizing the issue. Obviously that exercise routine's rubbish. They clearly made it up to sell their equipment. Any idiot can see that. The third is to limit the impact of the action that caused the dissonance. It's just one donut. How can one donut be a problem? It's not like I'm going to eat the whole box of them. Yeah, I do martial arts, and I have done for years. And yeah, I know I've never convincingly beaten anyone in sparring, even the new guys, but if I focus on my form in kata, it'll be fine. Yeah, I do martial arts. Proper ones. Not like those stupid sports where all they do is roll around on the floor. The sorts of things I practice would beat them easily. Yeah, that new guy beat me the other day, but that's because I didn't want to hurt him. I could have beaten him if I really wanted to. People will literally change their entire belief structure in order to avoid the uncomfortable feelings that come from cognitive dissonance. Grappling on tarmac's completely different from grappling on mats. I could never get caught like that. I can sense someone's intent before they attack me. If someone got hold of me, I'd just gouge their eyes out or twist their head until it broke their neck. The way those UFC people fight, so messy, a proper martial artist would beat them easily. All of these statements, and the ones like them, simply stem from an attempt to deal with cognitive dissonance. No one who trains with Malcolm the self-appointed 15th Dan from Tiger Martial Arts really thinks they could win a proper fight, but if they look at that fact straight on, in the cold light of day, it puts them in an incredibly uncomfortable psychological situation where they're forced to accept some very difficult truths. It's far easier to just not think about it, or to come up with reasons that people who actually train in actual fighting aren't any good either. When it actually comes down to it, the people who are most likely to swim well when it really matters are the people who train by swimming in water. The people who are most likely to run fast and for long distances are the people who actually train at running. The people who are going to be best at throwing javelins are the people who train with actual throwing and actual javelins. The people who are going to be better at fighting are going to be the people who train with actual fighting. No, your eye gouge won't work. No, tarmac won't magically immobilise me when we land on it, but not you. And no, there isn't a hope in hell that you're going to be able to get hold of my head and twist it so hard and so far that you'll break my neck. Take a moment and examine those uncomfortable feelings you have in the back of your mind about how good you really are. Maybe take your traditional martial arts skills and try them against someone from jiu-jitsu, or from wrestling, or Muay Thai, or judo, or boxing, or any system where they actually train against 100% resistance. If you do that with an open mind, and try really hard to be honest with yourself, you may be very surprised at the outcome. As a side note, if you're one of those people who thinks combat sports wouldn't work against you, and you live anywhere near me in the southeast of England, I'd be really happy to get together for a friendly session where we can explore what works and what doesn't. I'd even be happy to do some light grappling with you outside, on the tarmac, or the concrete, or the stone, or wherever, really. The fact is, I'm not going to be the one on the bottom, so it doesn't really matter what the surface is. And on that note, I'll stop ranting and tell you a little bit about this video's sponsor. It's me! Clearly this isn't really a sponsor segment, but I wanted to let you know about a thing I'm launching and to give you an opportunity to be part of it. For a long time I've been having similar conversations with people from all over the world where they get in touch and they ask me where they can learn catch wrestling. The sad fact is that there aren't actually many places with a decent level of instruction wherever you are. If you're close to one, get along to it. You know, stop watching now, drop them an email, arrange to go and train with them, and do it. You won't regret it. But if you watched my recent interview with Josh Barnett, who is, let's face it, probably the most successful and most well-known catch wrestler in the world, what he says is to get along to whatever grappling you have nearby. Whether it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling, judo, anything. As long as there's proper live rolling, it will help you. And to buy instructionals online, get to seminars and camps wherever the opportunity arises. And then you can start integrating those catch wrestling snippets, those techniques, into your own game. If you can find somebody there that also wants to learn it and you can kind of work on those techniques together, even better. It's brilliant advice. I hope you take it. So what I'm doing is developing a basic curriculum of fundamental catch wrestling skills, and I'm going to be releasing it to the public over at catcherscatchcan.org. But I need your help. I want to make this course, and every subsequent course, as good as they can possibly be. So I'm looking to recruit a small team of people to help me. I won't go into any great detail here, as it's all on a page I've linked to in the description. But if you go to catcherscatchcan.org/editorial-team, you can have a read, and if you'd be willing to give a little of your time and give me your honest feedback on what I'm building, and you'd like lifetime membership of everything I create there in return, that would be amazing. I'm not after a big group of people, maybe a dozen, and when I get them, I'm going to close the offer down, so don't leave it too long to decide. Anyway, back to, well, me. So, what do you think? Am I right about combat sports? Or am I talking rubbish? Is cognitive dissonance even a real thing? Stick something in the comments and tell me what an insightful and erudite chap I am, or that I'm a moron. It's entirely up to you. And to those of you still here at the end of the video, fight team.